Hi everybody, welcome to week 10 of your Practicum course. So this week we are looking at advocating for change in a culturally sensitive manner, and it's part of that being a change agent and leader, right, that we were talking about last week. So first, I just want to talk a little bit about culture in general. So often when we hear the word culture or culturally diverse, we tend to think first maybe about race and ethnicity. That's often what comes to mind when we hear those terms. But as you know, and from your courses, culture is quite a bit broader than that. And when we're dealing with college students, newer nurses, they may not have had a lot of exposure to diverse cultures, okay? And a gen ed teacher that I knew when I used to teach at a community college, he used to have his students fill out a privilege checklist, and I'm going to attach it. Basically, they were to check off any of the statements that applied to them. And some of them are things like maybe I'm white, or I have never been catcalled, or I am free to have public displays of affection with my partner in public. A whole bunch of different things. And what we find is that most articles or texts about cultural sensitivity will say that you need to start with identifying your own biases. And so this checklist sheet helped my friend to start that conversation with his students. And I've used it a couple of times with my students, and sometimes it can be quite eye-opening to identify things that you take for granted in terms of looking at what bias that might present as we look at the rest of the world. So I'm going to attach that, so you can take a look at it and see what you think. All right, so in the workplace, we usually have some of the cultural issues brought up in the checklist: race, gender, sexual orientation, income level, etc. Okay, we see those all the time. But there's also a particular organizational culture and probably unit cultures or department cultures that maybe you've already seen. These things we need to consider when trying to advocate for change in these cultures. And they may be things like, how do decisions get made? Who are the informal leaders? Is research valued in the organization? Is there much trust within the organization? So all sorts of things like that go into the organizational culture. Is there a cultural norm about speaking up? Is there a cultural norm about being quiet and accepting the status quo? All sorts of things like that go into this, if change is going to be successful or not. So getting a feel for these can be really helpful. We like to think that implementing a positive change should be a straightforward process. Okay. Some new to the change process might be surprised by what some view as politics, but which may really just be a reflection of the cultural norms within that setting. Okay, so all these things could impact the process of trying to implement a change within a particular organization, and we need to be aware of them. Some can maybe be changed, some can't, some we just need to work around. So I look forward to hearing your thoughts about culture and your experiences in your organization and what you think about change being implemented there and how you would look at cultural sensitivity in your organization. So, all right, so this week, we again have the NEPD forms that are due, and I'm sorry it took me a little longer than usual to get these back to you. I just had some lengthy papers that I had to give a lot of feedback on to another class that I'm teaching, but they're all back, and you have your feedback. And reading your NEPD forms is actually a really pleasant point in my week, so I do enjoy looking at those. One note about midterm evaluations. I still have 5 of you who have not uploaded your midterm evaluation form yet. As we're now in week 10, I'm hoping that you're really getting close to achieving that halfway point with your hours. I know some of you started a little later in your practicum, but please try to get those forms completed by your preceptor and then uploaded as soon as possible. All right, I think that's about it this week. Only 27 days until spring. I'll see you in the main forum.